Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. My wife and I were so excited to finally buy our first house together after years of saving and searching. We had just gotten married last year and were ready to start this next chapter of our lives. The house we found was absolutely perfect, a cute little two-bedroom cottage-style home with a big backyard. It was in a nice, quiet neighborhood and we just loved everything about it. The day we got the keys and walked in for the first time, we were over the moon. We started moving our stuff in right away, eager to get settled. The first night sleeping there felt so surreal. Waking up in our new home that first morning was such a happy feeling. That feeling didn't last long, though. Later that day, as we were still unpacking boxes, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find an older woman standing there with a stern look on her face. Before I could even say hello, she barged right in and started looking around. Excuse me? Can I help you? I asked, completely confused. She glanced at me with a glare and said, "Yes, you can help by getting out of my house immediately." I was stunned. "I'm sorry, what? This is my house that I just bought. I think you have the wrong address." The woman rolled her eyes dramatically. "No, this is my house. I've lived here for 15 years. Now take your things and get out." My wife came over, having heard the commotion. "What is going on?" she asked. I quickly explained how this random woman was claiming this was her house. The woman scoffed at us. "I'm not random, you imbeciles. My name is Karen. Let me repeat myself. This is my house. Now leave before I call the police." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This had to be some kind of prank or misunderstanding. I calmly tried to explain to Karen that we had just purchased the home legally, and even showed her our paperwork with the deed. She dismissed it immediately. "Those papers mean nothing. This house belongs to me. I'll have you arrested for trespassing if you don't vacate the premises at once." My wife looked like she wanted to slap Karen, which I couldn't blame her for. "Look, lady, we bought this house fair and square. We're not going anywhere," she said angrily. Karen's face turned red with rage. She stormed out, shouting that she was calling the cops. I sighed, figuring we should probably call them too and get this mess sorted out. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up. Karen was right behind them, yelling about how we had broken into her house and were squatting there illegally. The cops came inside and we showed them all of our paperwork. They tried to explain to Karen that the house had been sold to us and was our legal property now. Karen was having none of it. She shoved some papers in the cops' faces, claiming it was proof that she owned the house. The cops looked it over skeptically. I caught a glimpse of the documents and noticed they looked shady, nothing like the professional ones we had. The cops told Karen her proof was clearly forged and invalid. They advised her to leave immediately, or she would be arrested for trespassing. Karen left in a huff, but not before dramatically proclaiming she would be back, and we had not seen the last of her. I rolled my eyes, just relieved she was finally gone. The next few days were peaceful. But sure enough, about a week later, I arrived home to find Karen back on our doorstep. She held up some new documents, a smug look on her face. "Officers, arrest these squatters immediately. Here is the valid paperwork proving my ownership." Before the cops could even respond, I laughed. "Nice try, Karen, but we're not falling for your forged nonsense again." The cops agreed with me, but Karen wouldn't give up. She kept making dramatic threats to call her lawyers and have us evicted. She began coming by almost daily, sometimes with official-looking people in suits trying anything to get us kicked out of the house we legally owned. It was ridiculous, but slowly started to become genuinely concerning. One day, I arrived home to find Karen and some big intimidating men actually entering our house, bags packed like they were moving in. I rushed inside, yelling for them to get out immediately. The men tried to physically remove me, but I pushed past them and called the cops in a panic. This had gone way too far. Karen and her goons attempted to show more forged documents to the cops, but this time the cops were done playing games. They arrested all of them on the spot for trespassing. Karen was screaming bloody murder about suing us as she got shoved in the back of the police car. I almost felt bad for her for a second since she seemed mentally unwell. But when the cops investigated further, they uncovered the whole scheme. Karen had been making and selling forged property documents for years. She would find empty homes and invade them, claiming to be the owner to scam people into buying the houses from her before the real owners returned. Thanks to us refusing to fall for her scam, the authorities finally had enough evidence to press charges. Karen had a whole fake document forgery operation set up right in her own home. She ended up being sentenced to years in prison for fraud. I felt bad her mental health had deteriorated so much that she resorted to elaborate scams. But I was relieved we could finally feel safe and settled in the home we worked so hard for. The neighborhood was peaceful again without Karen disrupting it. My wife and I were just grateful we didn't let her bully us into giving up our dream home. We finally got to happily begin our lives together, Karen-free. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This incident happened in the summer of 2018. I played a small part, but the real star was my landlord. A little background. It's common in my country to have apartment buildings next to houses, yard and all. I live in one such building with 10 apartments. There are 2 on each of the first 4 floors, 1 on the ground floor, and 1 on the top floor. The top floor is used by the landlord and his family when they come for vacations. He lives abroad. The rest of the apartments are rentals. We also have a small backyard with a side entrance, important for later. Next to the building is an empty lot that also belongs to the landlord. We use it as a private parking space, with signs clearly stating that it's private. It can accommodate 10 cars, 1 per apartment, and has the side entrance. Additionally, since I was the longest tenant, I served as the superintendent. My job was to be the liaison between the tenants and the landlord and communicate any problems and concerns to him. The problem started when the house across the street from us was sold. A lovely old lady used to live there, but after she passed away, the house fell into disarray, especially the large yard. The new owners were Ken and Karen, fake names, but they lived up to the meme. They immediately began major renovations, which was acceptable. However, they also started parking their cars in our 2 empty spots, 1 for the landlord and 1 for the lady on the ground floor who didn't own a car. At first, we would inform them that the spots were reserved and they would move their cars, but when they noticed that the spots remained empty, they started parking there permanently. I had notified the landlord, and he told me to take pictures, log every incident, and always notify the police. We started doing that every day. Ken is a hotshot local businessman, and every time we called the cops, he would cause a scene about us being jerks. He always received a fine, but he would boldly proclaim that he would not pay. The worst part came about a month before the landlord's annual visit. They stopped using one of their cars and left it permanently in front of the side entrance, blocking it. That was a huge issue. You see, the lady living on the ground floor is a renal dialysis patient, and 3 times a week she goes for a session at the local hospital. The ambulance brings her back and usually parks next to the side entrance because she is exhausted after a session. With Karen's car parked there, that wasn't doable anymore. They wouldn't move it even when the police were called. I notified the landlord and tried to restrain our hothead from doing anything foolish. The calmer thing he proposed was slashing their tires. Finally, our landlord arrives. I hand him the photos and the logs, and he calls Ken over. Tony, the landlord, calmly explains that they are not allowed to park in our space and asks them to move their cars. Ken's response is, "Who the hell do you think you are? I can park anywhere I want." Now Ken considers himself a big fish in our small town, but Tony is a big fish in a major foreign city, and he is very creative when somebody pisses him off. He tells us to leave the spot next to the side entrance open for the weekend, and he will take care of things. We do that, and Ken parks his car next to his wife's. On Sunday evening, a tow truck arrives and unloads an old Citroen DS, also known as the Frog, blocking both of their cars. On Monday morning, I am woken up by the buzzer, and when I go downstairs, Ken and Karen are there. They are both livid because they can't move either car. Tony joins me, all smiles. Ken sees him and loses it. He starts shouting and cursing. Tony, still smiling, replies, "I don't see a problem. My car is legally parked. What are you going to do about it?" Ken angrily gets into his car and reverses onto the DS, crushing them both. Tony's smile becomes that of a shark. He immediately calls the police and presses charges against Ken. The aftermath. Tony had legally bought the DS from his cousin, who owns a car repair and restoration shop. The car was a restoration project and was insured. The court found Ken liable for the damage done. They also found out that he had kept his word and hadn't paid any of the tickets. The fines for the tickets alone were almost €2,000. He had also leased both his cars, and the leasing companies dropped him as a client immediately for intentionally causing an accident and damaging the leased car. They were sued for damages. Ken got another car but learned his lesson and hasn't parked in our spots ever since. The next one is a petty revenge story. This was around the summer of 2015. I had gone to the grocery store to buy a few things, as usual. Everything was going well until I heard a lady yell at me as I was walking into the store. "Is this your car? Can you move it? Why would you park here?" I was in disbelief. The parking lot was pretty small and it was located in a downtown area. It was small but big enough for people to navigate. It's hard to explain, but I had parked horizontally to the store, while she had parked straight in a regular spot. It was possible to get out with a 3-point turn. I don't know why they designed it that way, but whatever. I thought about it for a second and then said, "You just can't drive." I would have moved it if she had asked nicely, to be honest. I understand that some people are terrible drivers, but this lady didn't even try to get out. She was driving a medium-sized SUV, RAV4, and my car is a specific car model. I walked in and did my shopping. 15 minutes later, I was checking out, and she came inside and started yelling at me again. I was dumbfounded because she was still here and hadn't even made an attempt to move. She called me an a-hole, a idiot, selfish, etc. I just stared and sarcastically waved by as she left. She was pissed. As I was walking out, I thought, you know what, screw this. This lady is a huge idiot, and I wanted to waste her time as much as possible. There was a McDonald's next door. I had wanted to go to the bathroom all day, and I finally did. I spent a bit of time on Reddit while on the toilet and then ordered an ice cream cone. It took about 25 minutes in total. While walking back to the car, she was still here. I wish I was joking. She could have easily backed out with a little effort, but she didn't try and thinks I'm in the wrong. She was recording me as I was walking back to my car. I just smiled and told her to have a good day, then drove off. The next one is a malicious compliance story. At the beginning of the COVID lockdown, the company that I work for put out a notice to all clients that we would not be doing occupied repairs unless it was an emergency. Less than a week into the lockdown, one of our clients decided that our notice did not apply to them. They called us to do an occupied repair for a hole in the wall with a side note to retrieve the baseball inside. The following morning, I checked in at the leasing office and tried to get as little information as possible about where the hole was and any details about what I was about to walk into. I was told that they wanted the ball back because it was autographed and very valuable. Their kid was playing with it in the apartment. I was also informed to try and keep it to a minimum because the resident was paying for the repair. I wished they had told me how difficult the resident was going to be. I went to the apartment, introduced myself to the resident, and was greeted with, "What? They couldn't find a Mexican to fix my wall? They sent the cracker to make my home look like crap." I tried to assure her that I could fix the wall, but she just slammed the door in my face. I returned to the leasing office and explained to the assistant maintenance supervisor, AMS, what had just happened, and he simply said, "Here we go again. Let's go. I'll talk to her." We both went back to the apartment. The AMS told her that I was more than capable of fixing the wall, and that he personally requested me to do the job. She let us in with a look of disapproval. I started the job by spreading out a drop cloth and plastic, and then I cut out the already baseball-sized hole bigger so I could see and feel around for the ball. However, I realized that the wall was a staggered wall, with two walls built with an inch of space between them, and I wouldn't be able to find it. For those who don't know, a staggered wall is used for muffling noises and often used to hide plumbing. I told the AMS that she really wanted that ball, so I would need to open the wall even more. He went to talk to the resident, and all I heard was her yelling, "I don't give a damn if he has to open the entire wall. I want that ducking ball." The AMS came back and motioned for me to take a step outside while he made a phone call. A minute later, my boss called me and told me, "When I get the okay, do whatever you need to find the ball and keep track of your time." At that point, I realized I was going to have to open up a wall just to find a ball. The property manager showed up with a paper in hand and had the resident sign it, then turned to me and said, "Go for it." I began taking out the lower half of the wall, pulling out the insulation, looking high and low. About 1.5 hours later, we found it in the insulation, wedged between the plumbing and a stud in the neighboring wall. The AMS let the resident know we found it, and she went to collect the baseball and freaked out. The AMS reminded her that she didn't give a damn if I had to open the entire wall. Needless to say, I closed up the wall, leaving no sign of it ever being opened. The paper the property manager had her sign was to ensure that the resident would cover all costs, So what should have been a $200 job turned into a $1,000 plus job, and the autographed baseball turned out to be worthless. The autograph was from college players who didn't go pro. Hopefully she learned something from this. The next one is an entitled people story. I, 28F, have the worst relationship with my grandmother, 91F. She's emotionally abusive, shows favoritism towards kids, grandchildren, and great-grandkids, and verbally abuses me. I could go on, but trust me, the list is endless. After she expressed joy over my older brother's passing in 2014, when he was 25 and was pleased when I delivered my stillborn baby, I decided to cut her off and pretend she doesn't exist. Since then, at every family event or reunion, I've chosen to ignore her. Although she has tried to get her favorite grandchildren, my cousins, 33F, 30M, and 26F, as well as my younger brother, 23M, to convince me to talk to her or say hello. As Puerto Ricans, we are taught to respect our elders. I didn't care. She has tried everything in her book, but nothing has worked. In 2021, my dad received a call from his sister, 52F, Grandma's favorite daughter, informing him that Grandma was sick and needed help from her children and grandchildren since she couldn't manage on her own. I refused, explaining that I had college classes and work, and I wasn't going to do it because I knew she would verbally abuse me. Little did I know that I was on speakerphone and Grandma overheard, leading her to burst into tears, claiming I had disrespected her. She enlisted her favorite grandchildren to persuade me, but I stood my ground. A month ago, I graduated from college with my associate degree, and one of my aunts organized a BBQ to celebrate the recent graduates and May birthdays. Grandma was invited, but I didn't let it ruin my day. We were all having a good time until it was time for a cheer and congratulations for the birthdays and graduates. One of my aunts mentioned in her cheer that after 20 years, they had another magna cum laude graduate, referring to me, and expressed how proud she was that I never gave up. Everyone was proud until my grandmother shouted, demanding that we respect the ones who didn't graduate magna cum laude. As my aunt had said, I was the only one with that distinction, while the others had recently graduated from high school. Or, please respect the ones who didn't go to college and waste their time, referring to my younger brother. I remained calm and composed, and I confronted her about her favoritism, how she always defends abusers, referring to my younger brother's history of domestic violence, and how I was tired of being her verbal punching bag. My grandmother, favorite daughter, and grandchildren left, but the party continued. When I returned to my apartment, I found multiple messages asking me to apologize to Grandma because she felt offended by my actions, but I had already blocked them, including my brother. Other family members are on my side since they have all endured my grandmother's verbal abuse, so yes, I will continue standing up to her. The next one is an entitled parent story. I, 26F, live in a rented house with a single mother, 30F, and her son, 6M. I had another person living with me, but they moved out, and the mother moved in. I don't mind living with her and her kid. It's fine, and we kind of do our own thing. I spend a lot of time at my boyfriend's place or working. Our work schedules collide, so we really don't interact much, but when we do, it's fine. No issue there. I want to start by saying that she clearly struggles financially, but I don't think it's an excuse. I don't make lots of money either. However, I've noticed that my food would go missing, or portions would be taken from it. I assumed it was her kid, so I asked her if she'd stop him from eating my food. I was calm about it, and she just said she would. It didn't really upset me when it first started. It started getting annoying when I'd get home from work and expect to have a meal's worth of leftovers in the fridge, only to see it picked through or just gone. I kept bringing it up, and she started getting annoyed with me for bringing it up. Just from observing them, I realized that neither of them ever eats vegetables, and judging by the food that would get picked through and the food that would be untouched, anything with green in it was avoided. Orange chicken would be gone, but chicken and broccoli would be untouched. So I started putting vegetables in everything. I find vegetables to be delicious, and anything green or not, a potato does not get eaten. So I could mix some bell peppers into the food and it would be fine. I make a big portion of vegetables pretty frequently anyway, so I just started putting them in everything I eat. If I had leftover mashed potatoes, I'd pour green beans in and mix it up. If I had leftover cheesy bacon fries, I'd pour broccoli all over them and mix it in. Usually my homemade stuff has vegetables in it, but I started making sure everything did. I made a pot of mac and cheese, the kids' favorite thing, and poured in roasted Brussels sprouts, which is actually delicious to me. And I'm eating more vegetables, so it's a win-win. She had been seeming annoyed, but we were all home when I made the pot of mac and cheese. She was in the living room and saw me get out the Brussels sprouts and asked, "What are you going to do with that?" And I poured them in. She said I was being greedy and annoying. I just said, "I like Brussels sprouts." And that was it. She said, "We need food." And I told her to go get some or stop buying only prepackaged things and her money will go further. I think she sees this as some big act of revenge, but I just simply want to be able to eat my food. I also want to add that the sharing is not the issue. It's expecting to have food there and it's not. So often I'd be working a long day and get home expecting to have a meal's worth of food and it's all gone. Or I wake up in a rush and have my food ready to eat in the morning, only to find it gone. So now I have to skip breakfast. If she would simply text sometimes, "Hey, is it okay if we eat food item?" I would know and know to make other plans. I would stop for food or know I have to whip something up when I get home. Also, I think eating the last of someone else's food is crazy and rude. If someone makes a big pot of something and you ask for a serving, sure. But if someone made something and there is one serving left and you eat it without permission, that is evil as hell. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.